Hello everyone and welcome to tonight's live stream. Tonight we are live doing a live question time. Question time is a show I do every single Wednesday where you get to ask me any question you want about anything really, but mostly about game dev, but you can ask me whatever you want really. And it's an hour time where I can help bug fix, give you ideas, give you some inspirations, things of where to look, point you in the right direction. So yeah, ask me whatever you want. So the way it works, you just chuck it into chat. I'll try and catch it and try and answer it as best I can, as many questions as I can within the hour. Before we get started, a reminder, I do one-to-one private tuition and private videos for people. So if you need any help with your game you're making, with any just general tutorial or session help with something, or bug fixing, email me and to find out how much it costs and so forth. Full details on my website anyway, but feel free to email me at support@ryanlade.com. February is full, March is near full, so if you want a session for March, you want to get in as soon as possible, because it is literally, I think I've got about 31 sessions so far booked in for March, so there's only a couple more slots left really. So yeah, send me emails if you want information. I'll give you as much information as I can. To find all the rates, also got my website as well. Hello everyone in chat. So we are live, so we do have chat open here. So hello Angus, Jatifer, Matuk. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Irish Rick, hello again. Hello Underfunded Scientist. Yeah, great, excellent. So yeah, let's get started. So I'm just going to switch over to the other view because I can always forget to do that. And here we are. Oh, I'm a little bit short in the corner there, but that's alright. Don't mind, don't have to see my ugly mug. Okay, so let's go through what we've got here. So, Disgruntled Pirate. Hey Ryan, great channel, always helpful. Question. How would you add an actor or mesh to an existing instance static mesh component, adding a new tree to an instance, for example? Sure, okay. So, let's just do it with a rock that comes with our scene here. So, there's your instance of your mesh. Then you go over to your details panel and you'll see it here. And I'm just going to duplicate that. And we've now got two rocks. And I can just drag it out like so. I can also change this to anything I want. So I don't have to do that. I can do it with, I don't know, shelf. And I can customize it wherever I want. And it doesn't affect the original mesh, because the original mesh is just itself. This is an instance of it. So we can add whatever we want to it. In fact, if I want to add an act to it, okay, let's say for example I have let's make a simple actor, and very simple actor. I'm going to go add a sphere, move over there, make it small and make it rotate. Done. Okay, so there's my new blueprint. If I want to add it to this instance, I'll just go add component. I can add whatever I want to it. So if I want to add lights to it, if I want to add anything else to it, if I want to add an actor to it, like you asked, you just go child actor. And you choose your one here. So this is my new blueprint. I don't think I can drag it onto there. Oh, I can. Cool. And that should now be there, which it is. I'm just going to change the height of it. Hit play. And now I've got a spinning ball around my rock here. Okay. So you can add anything you want to it. So if I want to add some lights to it, I can add a light. Like so, and just make it whatever I want. You can customize your static meshes to have bits attached to them, different components. But there you go. Hopefully that answers your question. Next up, we've got Irish Rick. Hey mate, just a quick one for you. I've been watching your channels, but I'm just wondering, to get the most out of videos, what are the best videos to start with and go forward with? If you're brand new to game development, and especially brand new to Unreal Engine 4, start with my playlist of making your first game in Unreal Engine 4. It covers the basics and covers pretty much all elements of the engine, and you get to make a game at the end of it. And there's some challenges at the end of it that I would encourage people to try. That way you get to test what you've learned and apply it. Once you've done that, then world's your oyster, really. It all depends on what you're trying to achieve. I try to make them as beginner friendly as possible, all the videos, but definitely that playlist is designed for people who have never touched it before. But yeah. And you're also doing, you're also doing one-to-one with me in March. Yep, that's great. Thank you so much. Moro Jr. Hi, good night. Can I use a string table for multiple languages in my project? Yeah, I think so. I haven't done translation stuff, but there is something about it. In your project settings, translation, no, language. No. Localization. I swear I've seen something about it. Is it here? That's chunks. Otherwise, yeah, you could do it manually. I swear there was something in here that does it, but I may be wrong. I may be wrong. But you can definitely do your own custom one. You need to do different string tables and do one for English, one for Spanish, one for Italian, one for French, whatever you want to do. And then you just call which one it is based on the settings in the game. Hello from Mexico. Hello, Mexico 40. Connor Close. Hey, Ryan. If I spawn an item into my networked game through the game mode, can you explain the flow for the correct RPC calls needed to despawn it after its animation has finished? Okay. So, let's say this is your item. So this has been spawned into the world, and because if you've done it correctly, it should have spawned on all the clients as well. And once it's done that, then you don't need to do anything else, because the animation, I don't know what your thing is. If you spawn it and it plays an animation, and as soon as it finishes the animation, it destroys itself. You don't have to do any network stuff with it, because once it's spawned into the client, you just do on animation finished, destroy actor. The client can handle that side of things. You don't need the server to interfere with that. If you're having trouble spawning it in the first place, it's a little bit different. But if you've managed, it sounds like you've managed to spawn it on the clients. It's just despawning it. If it's a case where you don't know if the animation of it is played, you have to decide what triggers that animation, and then you do the RPC call on the playing of the animation. If you can give me more details, Connor, that would help. You don't need to despawn it from the server event. You just despawn it locally. You just destroy it locally. Moving it back under the world. Okay, you just again, it's all done locally. You can do whatever you want locally. So once you've spawned it, the networked stuff, despawning it, the way you've described it isn't networked. The despawn you've got tied to animation. The start of the animation would be networked, but the end of it doesn't matter. You can put that all. That's all client side. So it has no multiplayer stuff required. Irish Rick, how many years did it take you to get the hang of UE4? I started a couple months ago and got the basics down and spending 3 hours a night learning different things. Hard to say. Before Unreal Engine 4, I used other engines, so I was already quite familiar with like sort of object-oriented programming and in general, just programming in general, and making games. But Unreal Engine 4 itself, probably a few months to get the hang of it. Like once I started learning it properly, about 3 months. And to say that I've learned everything, I haven't. There's still tons of it I don't know. I think it's impossible for anyone to know everything about it. What I'm good at is problem solving and creative thinking. So that's where my skills come in and how I can learn things quickly. But I've always been a quick learner. Connor, so it's all local. You don't need to take it to move them both. No. If the animation is being told to play on the client, and the animations are all playing on the client, and they're all going to like when the animation is ending, you want it all to move, then it can all be client side. It doesn't have to do anything server side. Yep, that's it. So what you've got there, what you've described there, so the game mode brings the item to the spawn point, replicates it across the client, and then plays the animation. That's all the network stuff done. All that's left is just all client side, because the animation is going to be the same animation, the same speed for all clients. You don't need to sync them up or anything like that, because they're all going to be locally synced anyway. They'll just despawn. Chris, Ryan, that new RPG series of yours, can it be done in third person, or does it have to be in FPS? It can be done in third. There's a few extra things to worry about, like animation wise, but other than that, it can be done in third. Irish Rick, also a follow-up question. I see people use cast too, and some people use interfaces to get the player character. What would you recommend? Is it possible you could do one of each now? Yes, so people always misuse cast and always misuse interface. Well, not always misuse interface, always misuse cast. They do two different things and have two different uses. They can achieve the same outcome, but what they're actually doing is different. So let's keep it on this one. So let me just get rid of this junk. Okay, so on here, let's say begin play. Okay, we have event begin play, and we get player character. Casting. The reason you want to cast, and only reason you want to cast, is if you've got a actor reference. So this is a reference here. The blue pins, they're references. If you've got a reference to something that is a parent of the child that you want, so get player character just returns here. See character object reference. I don't know if you'll see it on your screen, but if you hover over it, it tells you what reference it is. It's a character object reference. My player character is a child of character object reference, meaning all the unique stuff I've got on that character don't exist on this reference. It doesn't know what this is. So what casting does is it attempts to change that into its child version. So cast to first person character will attempt to change it into that character, into that node, into that type of class, which is then the output is here. If it doesn't succeed because it's not of that class, so if I were casting to actor, for example, actor is not a child of player character, so you can't cast to it. This will return cast failed. So the only time you're doing cast is if you've got a parent reference and you want to get that down to the child reference, the specific child reference, and that's because you're using functions to get generics, like this is doing. This is just getting the generic player character. All this is doing, this function does, if you actually look at the code, is it gets the player controller and looks at what pawn it's controlling, and that returns this, essentially. Interfaces are ways to communicate to other blueprints if you don't know if for certain they have the functions you want. So if for example you, like the way I've used interfaces before is when you do interacts. If I push interact button on my keyboard or my gamepad, I'm looking at something, the player character does not know what object it's looking at and whether or not it can interact with it. By default, it doesn't know what to do with it. So what it does is it sends a message to it, which is an interface. It sends a message to it going, hey, I'm interacting with you. And what it's going to do is when it receives that message, if it has that interface, then it knows what to do with it. It'll run it as an event. If it does not have the interface, then it just ignores it. It's a way of like poking it and going, wait, do your thing, do your thing. And it either returns yes or no. You don't know if it has or not. It's just going to attempt to do it. So they're the differences between the two. Interfaces are if you put an interface on it. If you if you want to, I'm trying to say it without saying the word interface. If you want to do something to an actor, but you don't necessarily know you're always going to need hitting that actor. If that makes any sense, you use an interface. I heard that interfaces are better for load times. As with your cast, you're getting everything associated with it, but with interfaces, you're just easiest way for load times. Again, they're used very differently. You won't. It's not. They're not the same. They don't do the same thing. They don't do the same thing. So you shouldn't be using them in that way. Casts are expensive because what it does is the computer takes this reference and basically takes and then tries to turn it and change the reference into this one. So basically it puts its attention onto it over there, and then it reports back over here. So you've got like switch going on here, and that switch is what's expensive. It switches over to it and tries to work on it. That's what's expensive. Interface is a one-directional. Hey, here you go. And it sends a message and it responds, and then it reacts to that message if it has an interface. They don't do the same thing. If you want to get the player character and get a specific reference to the player character, this is what you want to do. And when talking about optimization, this is another thing people get confused by as well. And I have this argument with the tick. And I always want to make a video about tick because everyone goes on about the tick. Optimization is all relative. So, for example, a cast is relatively expensive compared to other nodes. But on begin play, it does it once right at the start, and you won't notice it at all. It does like zero blip on any optimization. The time when it gets more bad is if I were doing like something like this on the tick. Therefore, it's doing it 60 times every frame. Not 60 times every frame, 60 times every second. So every frame, it's just calling this out. Now, that's expensive and wasteful because we don't need to do a cast. Once you've got that reference, you can store that reference for later use. So the correct way of doing it is that you, on begin play, you just get the reference and you promote it to a variable, and then you can use it however you want. You've got the reference to it. It's like looking up an address. This is basically knocking on the doors of all the houses to try and find the right one. And once it's found the right one, it stores that reference, that address to it. A reference, the best way to remember it is a reference is a location in memory. So this stores that location here. And then once you've got that location, you can just call upon it whenever you want. That's all you're trying to do is get a location to that memory. So it's all relative. So a cast here is relatively more expensive than other nodes. But if you're doing it correctly, it's not going to affect your game whatsoever. Likewise with a tick, everyone goes, don't ever use tick, don't ever use tick. If you never meant to use tick, it wouldn't be here. Okay? Tick is a tool, it's meant to be used, but used correctly. Like anything else in life, tools are the best used for the correct uses. Sounds simple, but that's what it means. For example, scissors are really crap as eating implements. So you don't use it as eating implements. A tick is only useful if you want to use it for the right reasons. So you see a lot of people using tick and then putting delays on it and other things like that. Chances are you're doing it for the wrong reasons. If you put something expensive onto a tick, then yes, it's going to badly optimize your game. But there are reasons to use the tick. Okay? It's why it exists, why you have access to it, why you want to use it. So don't be afraid of it. If you need to use it, then use it. And if you're doing something cheap on it, then it doesn't really matter. The things that are expensive on there is if you're getting like doing large for loops and large looping, what we call recursive functions. A recursive function is when it calls itself within itself. If you're doing that on a tick, then you're gonna see some blips. But if you're doing some basic crap on it, you ain't gonna notice nothing. Ticks are happening all over the place. You just don't realize it. They are happening everywhere. It's just the fundamentals of the game. Okay, right. Anyway, that's my rant over. Let's go back over to here. Chris, when my character takes damage, I can use a number from 100 to 0, and you can see the health going down. But when I use a progress bar, it doesn't work. What am I doing wrong? You're doing a common error there, Chris. A lot of people do this. So I'm going to do it on my first person character, and I'll show you. And also, I'll make a quick HUD for this. Hang on. HUD. And we'll just make a quick progress bar for this thing. Call it health bar. So I'll set it up the way you meant to do it. Okay, so you have health bar on your screen, is variable, blah, blah, blah. Hit compile. On the graph here, we're going to have a variable in here. And we'll call it player character. And we'll call that, and that'll be a first person character reference. And you'll make that editable and exposed on spawn. On the construct, you're going to grab player character out. And you're going to bind event to any damage. So when it receives damage and you run the event to receive damage, it triggers this as well. And we're going to do a custom event on here. Drag that down, custom event. And this is update health bar. We can then take the health bar out here, and like so. Now, when you get damage here, it's been done. We've got damage being here passed through. We don't really need this stuff, but what we do want is to just tell it to get the health from the player character and update it. So if you're doing a health value between 0 and 100, that's very easy to do. So you get player character. Let's put some health value on him. So I've got a health value. And let's say you've got a progress bar of like 100 there. Okay. So player character. You get the health of it. But then you normalize it to a range. So do normalize to range. And then you put in the minimum that's going to be, which most likely can be 0. And the range max, in your case, be 100. And then you set the percent to that result. Okay. And that's it. So to show you this working, we need to add our HUD to the screen. So let's just add our HUD to the screen. Create the widget. HUD. You can see player character being plugged in there. I'm going to plug in self. So I've now got a reference to the player character plugged into my HUD. And then return value here. We'll add to viewport. Like so. And now I'll do a basic input to take damage. So I'll do 1 key. So when I push 1, I'm going to apply damage. Damage actor is going to be self. Base damage is going to be 10. Okay. Then on my damage event, so event any damage, we'll take the health value, get minus the damage we've been dealt, set it back to health, and that's it. That's all you got to do. When this triggers, this will trigger because this is bound onto it, so it's bound to take any damage, event any damage. So it goes onto here and does this as well. So when I push, first of all, I have to set it to update health bar anyway. So once you start here, because this won't trigger, we need to update health bar at the start. So you just call update health bar. That's it. So now push play. There's a health bar. Hit 1 my keyboard. And you see update. Now the reason why it weren't working for you is because the percent figure on a progress bar goes from 0 to 1. You've got either no health or full health. And so whatever health value you're doing, you need to have the maximum HP plugged into your percent bars normalized to range. Normalized to range, what that does, it takes a value in and it looks at where it sits within the range. And if it's at the closer it is to the minimum, it'll be closer to 0. The closer it is to the maximum, it'll be closer to 1. And therefore you get this. Now if your player has a maximum health that is changing, you'll need a variable on it called health max or something to that effect. Then on your HUD, you just get the player character health max, and that'll be your maximum on your range. And that's it. So my max health here, if I change this to 200, for example, my health is starting at 100, therefore the health bar should be halfway full when I start the game. There you go, halfway full. And when I take damage, it adjusts accordingly. So it's relative to the size of the health value. Does it help you out, Chris? Hopefully that helps you out. A line trace on tick isn't too bad. No, line trace is fine. Line trace by channel is good practice. Line traces are well cheap. Kind of close. If I wanted to move an item from below the world into the spot of the original item brought in by the game mode, would that need to be called on the server from within the original actor? Then yes. Yeah, the server would, so you would have on the game mode here. So you'd have a custom event called spawn. We call it spawn thing, and that would do set actor location because you're moving it, I guess. So you want to do set actor location. Oh, I think get. No, hang on. Set actor location. Why can't I change it? There you go. And you plug in the actor obviously into it. So that'll spawn the thing, and you tell it where to go, and then you have to tell it to not do that. Sorry, God's sake, do a custom event, and this will be your replicated thing. So rep underscore spawn thing. That'll be plugged into here. Sorry, and this will be replicated to multicast, and then we just call rep spawn thing. Okay, so the game mode on the server calls the spawn thing, and then it replicates this across all of them to spawn the actor location. And that should do it. Jose, no, it isn't my birthday. That was referenced to someone else on YouTube. Sorry, I forgot to do it in just YouTube chat. Connor, okay, so the game mode would spawn in the weapon crate, then also spawn the item. The weapon crate would then spawn the item after its animation is finished. If you're spawning an item into your world, you can't. I don't know why you want to move it beneath the world. You can just spawn it into the world. You just like spawn actor from class, and then you tell it what item you want to spawn it in. You just call this thing and tell it which on the game mode which item is going to spawn into it. So imagine this is your crate, for example. You spawn it into the world. I don't know why you're moving it beneath the world. You said about garbage collection, but this is fine. It's not going to do much. So you spawn this into the world, and then you can just grab it and set its contents up, and then move it down. I've put a set number of items in the game and we're using them rather than spawn and delete, so it's not as costly. Honestly, mate, you're not going that isn't that costly. Unless you're making something that's ridiculous, you'll be fine. Think about things like GTA and Red Dead Redemption. There's no way in hell they're spawning actors all beneath the world and then bringing them up. They don't. That's not how it works. Just spawn the actor. Chris, when is my birthday then? My birthday is the 16th of October. Nico, hello. How can I replicate ragdolls for the UE4 mannequin? Replicate, I'm guessing you mean Unreal? Unreal multiplayer. Physics can't be replicated. Well, not easily anyway. You shouldn't replicate physics. That's all right, Chris. I usually do like a big birthday stream thing. I'll usually announce it. Yeah, so Nico, when you're doing anything with physics like ragdoll, don't replicate it. Physics is too much to replicate. It's a lot to do. It gets really janky. That's why when you look at multiplayer games, you see ragdolls or any physics-based stuff, people's rendering of the physics engine is different. The reason why it's so different is because physics engines base on the computer's clock, and that's how it simulates it. As a really derivative way of describing it, but that's essentially what it's doing. So to replicate the physics position of everything is a bit insane. Especially ragdolls. You shouldn't worry about ragdolls. Jose on Facebook is asking, by the way, have you thought of doing a hack and slash? I thought about doing loads of games. It's just getting the time. We're starting to do RTS series, so there's that. Hack and slash, maybe, yeah, one day. Hello, Taldron, or Taldon, sorry. Irish Rick, can you explain or possibly dumb down Blackboard keys and how they work? When looking at AI, it's probably the part that confuses me the most. Any quick examples? So a Blackboard here, usually paired with a behavior tree. Now, what a Blackboard is, the best way I describe it is that you have these keys, okay? And think of keys as buckets, okay? So here I have a bucket for a vector, and I call it what I want to call it. So we call it location, for example. Blah, blah, blah. So this is a bucket that you can store a value into it, okay? Just drop it in. There's a value. Whoop, there you go. The Blackboard key is referring to the name of the key. So you just name the bucket, and you can say that bucket can only take vectors. So you can only drop vectors into it and read vectors from it. So on the task, when you make a new task up, if you've got on execute here, if you've got a variable and you want to for example, okay, so we get controlled pawn. We want to get the location of this pawn, okay? So get actor location, whatever. Get to location, and you've got a location you want to store into the Blackboard. Now, the reason why you use Blackboards is because tasks can't communicate to other tasks directly. Okay, they can't do that. So what they do is they throw their values into a Blackboard that's associated to whatever the task is attached to. And then everyone else can access the Blackboard bin and just grab what they need to grab. So to set it to the Blackboard bin, you create a variable, which is a Blackboard key selector. And the Blackboard key selector refers to, you can put anything in here, so I can call it like banana, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, and make that editable. And we can set it into here. So we get this Blackboard key. It doesn't know what type it is yet. So we're going to go into here, set Blackboard key or Blackboard value as vector. Plug that in, plug that in. Now I needed to make this public because when I add this task to my tree here, oh, did I not compile it? No, didn't compile it. So when I add it to the tree here, I need to tell it and link it to the Blackboard. At the moment, this is not linked to the Blackboard. This is just saying, hey, put it in this key. This key, like a little, like its own little bucket. It's going to put, okay, here it is. Hold it out. There we go. There's the value. Take it. Do something with it. And what the tree's doing is saying you can tell it what keys associated to it because the tree knows what Blackboard's associated to it. The task doesn't. So this knows what the Blackboard. The tree knows what the Blackboard is attached to it. As you can see, it's up here. So when you choose a drop down here, you can say, okay, banana is going to go into the location bin. And then it sends it over to the location bin. Then you use other nodes like move2, for example. And move2 asks for a Blackboard key. The Blackboard key is the type of bin. So where's the location for it? You just choose what bin that value is in. And then you just choose the location. So that's it, really. I mean, does that clear anything up? Or do you want me to try and rephrase it? But yeah. Yeah, Virion Spiral. That's how I describe it as well. Like the AI. So you have the body, the brain, the soul. Yeah. The brain. We refer to behavior tree as the brain because it makes the decisions. The soul is the controller, the thing that's saying like what you should be doing, like with your life. And the body is the thing that's the puppet that you're walking around. I also describe it as puppeteering. So you have the pawn, which is the puppet. You have the controller, which is the puppeteer, and then you have whatever's controlling the puppeteer, be it their brain or the AI, is the behavior tree. That's where I do it. Alright, Shriek, so if I create a vector for the bucket, for example, in a task, it will take the vector and move it out of the bucket for use later. Yes, because this can't communicate to this, so they have to go via the Blackboard. So this says, chuck whatever value, because I've got set into it. Okay, so it's sending a value to this here, and it says in the Blackboard here, hey, rub out whatever's there and replace it with this new value. That's why I call it a Blackboard. So it's like it's going on the Blackboard, writing onto the Blackboard, then walking away. Then the next task coming along, looking at the Blackboard and going, that's the value, and then walking away with it. That's why they call it the Blackboard. You have a Blackboard in the room. One task walks in, writes the Blackboard key on the value on the Blackboard. If he has to rub out the previous one, it will do, and then it will walk out. Then the next task will come in because I only did it one at a time. So the next task will come in, look at the Blackboard, go, okay, and that's the value, and walk out with it. Hopefully that helps. Yeah, and tasks are reusable because of their keys. Yeah. Gaming in slow motion. I know a lot about game development. How do you keep yourself motivated to keep developing? How do you stay on track and not throw in the towel? Choose something that excites you and isn't too much of a challenge. Like, know your limits, know what you can achieve, and make sure that the minimum viable product is achievable, something small. And if you do get stuck, don't be afraid. If the project turns out to be too difficult, don't be afraid to walk away from it. You can always come back to it later when you've become more proficient with the engine, with more software. Like, you may not know the information you need to know now to make the product you want, the game you want to make. So put it aside, make another game, and then learn from that, and then apply it to your first game. I think people get too hung up on their original idea and then feel like crap because they can't figure out the solution to something. That's fine. Just put it aside, move on to either another task or another game project. And the idea of not throwing in the towel, I mean, it happens to the best of us, but yeah, ultimately I enjoy making games. I like problem solving. I like having a problem that is, there's a creative solution to it. I know there's a solution to it. I know there is. I just need to find it. And that's what I like doing. I like finding the solution to a problem. That's why I look for when I'm making games. But I enjoy making games the same as, if not more, than actually playing them. So that helped me, at least, anyway. Ryan, have you tried writing C++ code? Is it harder than Blueprints? Yes, I have. Is it harder than Blueprints? Yes. Simple as that. C++ code is more difficult than, say, C# and Java. because C# and Java are like managed code, whereas C++ isn't. So you have to handle like what you're doing with your memory all the time. You'd be aware of that. There's also a ton of APIs to get used to and trying to find stuff. But it's not once you grasp basics of programming languages, you can learn. I can read any language. I can read any language I want and figure it out. Writing it becomes more difficult. Blueprints are a lot quicker to get stuff going. So I like making it in blueprints. And again, another common misconception people have is that you have to choose one or the other. The correct way to use Unreal Engine 4 is to use both together. So you have like engine designers and engine programmers adding new functions and new features for the game developers to use, and the game designers will take that stuff and make in blueprints the stuff they want to make. There's a very much an elitist sort of mode of saying, oh, it has to be C++, or it's not really a game. Bollocks. That's absolute rubbish. I've grown to really like blueprints. I find it more visually, it's more fun to make stuff with it. And because it is quicker to get things going, the results are therefore quicker to see and achieve. Therefore, you are rewarded. You have that mental reward, the dopamine kick in, like, that's great, that works. But yeah. Virion Spiral with multiple AI. Can you take control of it while it still continues its AI, but override it? Saying sorry for asking again, but it was related. Do you mean whilst it's moving around, you push something on your controller and you override it? Not easily. The way it works is there's only one controller per pawn. So per character, there's one controller, be it AI or player controller. Let's say it's AI controller. If you then possess it with the player controller, that AI controller is gone. You then have to tell that AI controller to repossess it. So you have to spawn an AI controller back in and repossess that character, that thing. The node for it is called what's it called? Spawn default controller. That one. And that will spawn the default AI controller. So you have to turn off. You have to take to get the player controller, possess it, and when you don't want to possess it anymore, you have to call this again, and the AI controller will take back control. So if you want it to be like quite fluid overriding of that information, that's a bit trickier. Because you have to look at inputs and yeah, it would be a pain in the butt. Quinundrum, can you go into more detail on how replicated ragdolls and simulated physics objects are a hassle? As I said, a physics engine works by using your local computer's clock, like the internal clock on it. Sorry. So when it's doing all the bouncing around, the slightest millisecond, like the millionth of a second, will affect the simulation of the physics. So if you wanted to replicate physics, what you would need to do is only make the server do the physics simulation, the actual physics simulation, and then all the individual pieces of the physics simulation, you would have to send that data over to the clients. So let's take a ragdoll, for example. On your player character, you have bones, okay? Okay, so let's go into... I've only got arms on it, but the skeleton's there. So if I just show the skeleton... Okay, so if you were to turn a ragdoll onto this and you wanted to replicate the ragdoll of this to all your clients, you'd have to send the location and transform data for every single bone, which is a lot. That's a lot of data to send to every single client. Normally, you're only sending one piece of data, and that's the general whole character's location. But then you're multiplying that by 30, and that's not including anything like facial stuff, if you've got facial stuff in it going into it as well. So, yeah, that's a lot of information to send over, and that's just one ragdoll. So what games do is they say, screw that. The player doesn't need, like, the clients don't need to know the exact ragdoll what's going on. What they do is they ragdoll this. They turn physics on the capsule as well, so and they just replicate the capsule's location and where that goes, maybe. But that or replicate the root, the pelvis. So they'll just replicate just that position, maybe. But they won't replicate all of this, because it's just an insane amount of data. Like the jump in data being sent across all your clients is a lot, and that's and. So, for example, if you're playing a 2-player game, your data you're sending is going by... I don't think this tells you how many bones this thing has. No. Let's assume 30, okay? It's probably more than that, but 30. Let's say 30. So, if you are playing just one person versus another person, it's got to replicate... And if both players go ragdoll, it's got to go from replicating 2 to replicating 60 values. Plus all the other crap it's replicating. So, it's doing loads of other replication stuff as well. And that's just 2-player. If it goes up by a factor of 30 for that. If you've got something like a 64-player match, you can see how quickly it gets unwieldy. When you're replicating, you typically only want to replicate stuff which is relevant to gameplay. If it's cosmetic, it don't matter, like at all. So, for example, if you look at Fall Guys, okay, Fall Guys is a very physics-based game. That's multiplayer based. What it's actually doing, have you noticed how like simple the meshes look? Is what they're doing is they're replicating 2 parts of the body only, the head and the bottom. I think they're doing 2 parts. The arms are just flailing around doing whatever they want to do on the client side, because you don't care what the other characters are doing, but you do need to know where their bodies are. So it replicates their head and their bottom, so you can get their orientation correct. So you can like trip over them and get blocked by them and things like that. So they replicate just 2 things per person. As soon as you replicate other stuff, then it becomes a lot more complicated. But one thing that you can see in Fall Guys is if you bust through one of those, the door, you know, the door one, when you got to bust through the door and the door's physics take over and knock wide open. The door pieces aren't replicated. And you know when a physics object isn't replicated, is that because they don't have any impact on the other clients you see running around. They have no impact on their movement whatsoever. But yeah, and I think that's the best I can really describe why that would be a bad idea to do. Austin Tyler, hi Ryan, I feel like I have a basic understanding of blueprints and coding, but whenever I stray from following tutorials, I quickly feel overwhelmed. Any suggestions for projects to overcome this? So, for example, I designed my Making Your First Game tutorial for the exact reason, okay? So, in my tutorial series, I showed how to make a maze game. Then at the very end, I said, here are some challenges which you can do to add to your project. These challenges will take the things that you've covered but twist them in some kind of way to add extra depth. But the twisting you're doing is like you're combining things you've learned from one thing to another to add extra elements. So I would recommend if you follow a tutorial, expand on it ever so slightly using something that you've used. That's why I included that at the end of my one, is because it forces people to take what they've learned or take what they've seen and hopefully learned and manipulate it in a way to create up a new solution. And that's what game development is learning how to make something and then how to take that thing apart and reapply it to other problems. That's games development in a nutshell. That's why games is an iterative process. That's why sequels get better than their previous ones, technically anyway. So there's my tip: is take a project and then either follow. If it has challenges, do the challenges. If it doesn't have challenges, come up with your own ones. Yeah, that's it really. And as always, I always say, and hence the emphasis on what I try to do in my channel, my videos, is make sure you understand why it's working, why you're doing it that way, why it is having that effect. If you understand the why, you will then understand the how. So that's why I explain that. You'd want to avoid just copying things like for like. So learn the why, and the how will be more apparent. M-Zone3D, hey Ryan, how do you go about making a third-person character do a monkey bar traversal? So jump up and have the character move across the ceiling monkey bars using their arms. It's just an animation. You just get to the ceiling, turn on flying mode, and away they go. You just play an animation of them moving around. And you have like different animations based on like a blend space, so they can go left and right, forwards, backwards. It's exactly the same as walking, but you put it in the air and you trigger it like you just turn it to flying mode, and then you can move it back and forth. Irish Rick, Ryan, when you were learning Unreal Engine 4, how did you learn it? What tutorials did you watch, or what was your method? I didn't really watch anyone. I kind of just jumped in and started mucking about. As I said, I came into it with knowledge in game development before. I've got a degree in game development. I've been teaching games development professionally for 9 years. So I know how programming works. I'm a programmer, so I know how programming works. I know how object-oriented programming works. I know how other engines work. So I'm coming into it with some basic knowledge. When I first saw Unreal, I had no idea what's going on. With Blueprints, I was like, I ain't got a clue. What I did was I didn't actually watch anyone. Not properly anyway. I just jumped in and started mucking about. Like if anyone here has done a one-to-one with me, it's very common in those one-to-one sessions with me. People go, "How do I do X, Y, Z?" I'll be like, "Honestly, I don't know. I haven't done it before. Let's have a crack at it." And we usually solve it. But it usually means me jumping in and just playing around, seeing what options do. Like I'll be like, okay, what does this setting do? Cool. Okay, let's muck about with it and see what it does, see what it changes, and then try and build an understanding of why it's doing those changes. So I learn by experimentation, and as I say, like the amount of one-to-ones I do, people come up to me with stuff that I haven't done before. I have to figure it out right there and then. So within an hour, we've solved it. So for example, making a jigsaw puzzle, making rideable dragons that you can fly around and shoot fireballs out of. We did that like last week with someone. Team AI. So just yesterday, we've done Team AI. We made teams run around and get into formations and like different and to random formations as well. So they can formate, and you have teams that will then attack each other, separate, follow leaders. We did that. Another person wanted to do animal-based AI, so the animal gets hungry, it will go find some place to eat, or wants to breed, it will find its mate and breed. What other crazy stuff have we done? Ninja-based stuff, I literally just done one today, doing ninja-based movements, so wall running, climbing stuff, ledge shimmering, and yeah, cable walking. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's tons of stuff. That people come to me like, how do I do this? I'm like, I'm honest. I'll say I don't know, but we'll figure it out together, and we'll usually come up to a solution. Oh, yeah, do you have any tutorials on 2D UE games? Not yet, but as I say, one of those one-to-ones I do regularly is someone who's doing a 2D game. So that's inspired me. I will do a paper 2D game series. Paper 2D has got some lackluster functions, but there's workarounds. We managed to get AI in there shooting you and running around and stuff like that. James Jocelyn, where did you get your degree? So I got my games development degree from University of East London, and I got my teaching degree from University of Essex. Hi, anyway. Happy birthday. Hope you're having a good one. Let's have a look. Sorry, I can't see what's going on here. Children, I thoroughly enjoy learning the why. It helps you troubleshoot a bit later in the process. Yeah. Like, one thing I like to try and do in my videos as well is if I mess up and I have a bug, depending on how bad it is, I'll keep it into the video and I'll show you me fixing the bug. For two reasons. One, to show that I'm not perfect. No one is. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone has silly mistakes sometimes as well. And secondly, I like to show me trying to solve it and like my brain process to going through and showcasing that. I like to be like honest with upfront with it, so I'll try and showcase what I've done to try and solve that problem, or where I found how I found the problem. So that's what I try and do. Hey Ryan, you play Little Nightmares 2? How do you think you could replicate the swing mechanic? I haven't played it. Is the swing mechanic like a grappling swing, like on the rope? Yeah, you could do that. That's not too difficult. I'll have to have a look at it and I'll have a look at it and see what we do. We haven't got time to do it today, unfortunately. We've run out of time. But maybe it's something we can do in a future video series, like a little grappling hook type thing, or like swinging on a rope. Shout out to Essex, ND. James Jocelyn, I found for me personally that I'm progressing after I shifted to fear of breaking something in my game and just forced myself to fiddle with the engine. Yeah, just play around with it. Just muck about with it. Anime boy, I'm currently creating a Spider-Man like game where you run up walls and swing. Do you have any tips? You'll be using the flying movement mode a lot. Climb up. I don't. If you so tomorrow. Is it tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow you'll get the archive release of last week's question time, and I show me walking up walls and like spider-like style. Check that out, and you'll see how to do that. It comes out tomorrow. Do you use code repository on your pet game projects, or are you doing them without backups? I have my OneDrive. My Unreal folders are all linked to my OneDrive, so as I save them, they get uploaded to the cloud. I don't use any source control for my stuff. It's just me making it. But it's all backed up to my OneDrive, so if it all goes tits up, I can, or I can like remove it from my PC hard drive, and it won't affect. It's still there. I don't have to worry about it. And also sharing it makes it a lot easier too, because I can just share it. A link to it. Eric Atom, coming late. Do you have an ETO in the second part in multiplayer series, actual connections, etc.? No specific dates. I do want to start it some point soon. We're getting kind of to almost the end of what I wanted to show with the first part. The second part will just so you know what the second part will include and what it won't include. So the second part will include peer-to-peer connections, or like when the player is client, player server connections. Most like on LAN stuff, and like WAN if you know IP for it. So the best way to think about it is think about how Minecraft used to connect multiplayer. You have to send an IP address to someone and connect to it. The reason why it'll be doing that is because matchmaking and server lobbies and all that stuff require dedicated servers, and that is much more complicated, and that will require a lot of C++ code, which is outside the scope of this particular tutorial series. But we'll show how to connect players together. And the benefit of it will be is that they should be able to connect cross-platform as well, because it's just an IP address. It should. I don't see why it wouldn't connect cross-platform. So the dedicated server stuff and all that will come at a lot later date. Could it C++ based? I want to start the C++ series first and explain how C++ works and get that going, and then go into that, because that's a lot harder to do and does require things like Amazon Web Services to accomplish it. Anime Boy, also have a question on the mirror. Do you have to use Photoshop? No, you can use any image editing software you want to make it. Or have no image at all. If you want just like a radar type thing, you can do. Gabrielis, is there a philosophy that a follow-up so project doesn't end up in spaghetti mess? Okay, so this will be the last question, I think, because we're out of time. Yeah, so we'll end with this question. So apologies if you didn't get to your question in time tonight. Again, we do this every Wednesday, so come in Wednesday 11 PM GMT. But I'll go through and end the session by showing off how to organise and stop your blueprint becoming a spaghetti western mess. Okay, so I'll show you some tips. So right. So I'm just going to separate this over here. Okay. Right. First step is make use of functions. If you find yourself duplicating code, make it a function or macro. Difference between the two is that macros are just a collection of codes that you can replicate across, and they are not run recursive. Functions are recursive, so they solve the function before it carries on to the next thing, whereas macros don't. So if you want to use like a delay, for example, if it has a little clock in the corner, that has to be a macro if you want a delay in it. Okay, because they run on like a different stream. Next, to keep organized, there are loads of little nodes here. So, for example, if I just get, let's get some random nodes here. Oh, get actor location. Let's just get actor rotation. So let's get, say you got some nodes here. Let's get another one as well. Get player character, whatever nodes they are. To keep extra organized, you can do multiple things here. So if you want to line them up like so, hit Q on your keyboard. Oh no, when they're connected, sorry, not there. So if we do like set actor location, has to be location. So if you've got like linked up like that, you want to line them up, hit Q, and it will line them up, dead straight line. Another thing you can do is when you've got nodes like this, you can select them all, right click, and you can do alignment. You can line it to the left, and they'll line it to the left. You can line it to the right, and you can do anything you want. Okay, so you line middle, line left, line center. You can also distribute it evenly, so distribute it horizontally or vertically. You keep it all nice and line. Do stuff like that. But the most useful thing I find is I break out multiple event graphs. So this event graph here is just one. You can actually have as many as you like. So over here on the graphs list over here, you can add a new graph. And I usually do this when I'm making my proper stuff, is I'll have an attack or like combat graph, okay? So combat graph, I'll have another one called movement graph. And the combat graph is where I put all the combat code. The movement graph is where I put all the movement code. So I can just copy and paste that. So this is movement based stuff. So that's that, and that. So all of this stuff, I'll take that and take all that, cut that from there, and put that in movement. Then on combat, I'm gonna have my spawn projectile, event graph. So take this, that's on combat. So cut that from there, put that in here, and I keep it nice and organized. So I can see and access each of these graphs by clicking on this, and it takes me to each one. I can also expand them open and see the individual events as well. Thank you, Simplify. Thank you for the donation. So yeah, could you you could just go through and add your own graphs to this. So that's what I usually do is I break it down into various things so you don't see just like mess everywhere. You can break them out even further if you want. It's up to you how you break it out. Variables, make sure that you are labeling them and giving them things. So health, for example, we've got health. I'll change it to a category here. So we do this like stats, for example. And you know, I've got stats on the left here. Probably you can't see it because my head is in the way. But I can drag it to the stats category there. And that's all organised there. So I've got itchy nose. My tash is going for nose. It's really itchy. Yeah. But yeah, so that's something that people don't really realise is that you can add multiple graphs to this thing. And like on your event graph here, so for example, we have VR stuff. So I can do like a VR graph here. So like VR graph. And I can just cut the VR stuff out here. Put that here. There you go. And then you put begin play. So begin play is right here. So yeah, one thing to note is that your events can only happen once across all your graphs. It treats them as one big thing, but for you visually, it's just separated out. So you can't duplicate like begin play if you've got something out somewhere else. But what you typically do is on your event graph here is you'll do like the HUD stuff, and then you do a custom event for this. A custom event, and you'll do like setup VR, and then you just call it at the start here. Setup VR, and then you can call that, so on and so forth. And that kind of stops you from doing that. And hopefully you all know already that the reroute node exists. You can double click on a line and reroute it to wherever you want to help you organise your lines a bit better. Yeah. Hopefully you've learned something from that. I don't know. Phil Zahn, dear Ryan, you released a game on mobile. I did. It's called Blob. Please download it. It's on iOS and Android, and it's free. Could you go over the process on Google Play Store and such if it isn't that intuitive? I won't do tonight, as we're about to end now, but I will do that for you next week. If you come by next week, I'll do it for them. But yeah. Okay. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. Let's just go back to the main menu thing here. Let's go back in here. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who have subscribed and everyone who is a Patreon member. So thank you so much. You guys are keeping the lights on, making me getting closer and closer to doing this full time. Because that's what I want to be doing. I want to be doing this, doing more streams for you guys, making more videos for you guys. As I say, we're now trying to commit to new content every single day of the week. And new types of content too. And there's plenty of new cool stuff coming out later this year. Can't wait to get to it and show you. So stay tuned for more information about that. If you haven't yet subscribed, make sure you're subscribed. If you haven't yet followed me on Twitter, Facebook, and so forth, and see your announcements happening there too. Don't forget, if you want one-to-one help or want help with your game, fixing projects, or even making a mechanic for your game, get in contact with me. I do offer one-to-one sessions, and I also offer private work too. Like paid private work. So if you want more information, just email me and I'll get back to that. All information to contact me is in my about page and in the description of most of my videos. That's all for tonight. So thank you everyone for coming by and asking your questions. Sorry for those who didn't get answer your questions in time. As I said, next Wednesday we'll be doing live. This Saturday though, don't forget, this Saturday we are returning to our retro remake in making Legend of Zelda Link to the Past, our own version of it for the modern era. So we've done episode 1, we're on episode 2 this weekend. So come by this weekend, this Saturday, as we are working towards making a Zelda clone. So thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you all next time. Bye everyone.